All right. Hey, everybody. It's your boy, Mr. Rob G, here on a Sunday edition of the Social Dig. Going kind of early today. Kind of want to just talk about some things that has been going on in ufology. And of course, we have my guy. He's been gone for a minute, but he's back. He's going to be joining in the conversation today. Nobody other than Mr. Mateo. How you doing, sir?
Hey, very well, Rob. Good to see you again. Good to be part of the
Yes.
show. Sorry I missed all those
No.
streams with Tim and all of this stuff. But anyways, I was with you from afar. Been traveling for
As I knew
business,
you
which
would
is
be.
all a good thing. And so no, we're back at least for about a week. I have to leave again next Friday for another trip, and then I'll
Hey,
be
we'll
back
keep
in
it
the
pushing.
mid-month.
Yeah, you know Tim Senor has been good. He's filled in a lot here, and
Oh
I
yeah,
totally
no, Tim's
appreciate
great.
everything that he's done. So
Yes.
yeah, definitely take breaks as needed. Disclosure is a crazy subject. It's a stressful subject. I found myself having to kind of disconnect myself over the holidays and kind of walk away from disclosure for a moment because I felt that I was like emotionally, like too emotionally invested in what was going on at that point. The UAP report had not come out, and I found myself like frustrated for the sake of humanity. And once I felt that, I said, you know what? Let me disconnect for a moment. Let's revisit this thing in the new year. And as soon as we did, the UAP report came. And we talked about that. I'm sure you saw the other episode,
Yes.
but now, before we even get started, obviously, since you've been gone for a minute, I definitely wanted to know what you thought about the UAP report. I talked about it on the previous episode, but I just wanted to
Ah.
get your take. We haven't talked in a moment.
No, we haven't. I'll say this. Initially, I was disappointed. I felt that the report was only a document describing the procedural portion of what was happening within the Arrow office, what was going to happen in the Arrow office, how all of the disclosure was going to, or how all of the reporting schemes were going to be done, discussion about a few things there. That initially I thought was disappointing. There really was no meat. Now, I did watch a lot of the people involved, the ufologists that we all know and love, and the different YouTube channels and their perception of it. And everybody, even Gary Nolan and a few of the others, Ross Coulthart, those guys all found the silver lining, right? They found that, hey, this is not anything new, but at least now there's a level of seriousness that is there that does bode well for what can come in 2023. So that aspect of it was good. And then beyond that, that's where I left it. I did actually see the slides that were also presented too as part of that report, the PowerPoint slides.
Mm.
And those were interesting too, because those had some other little bit more significant things in there that I thought were meaningful. But Kirkpatrick, his slides. So that was really interesting to me, because there was some statements made that kind of implied the phenomenon was real, even though they weren't coming right out and saying that. So there's a lot of hidden tidbits in there, including in the report.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
was going
see.
to say. So also, what we talked to Tim about last week when we discussed it was the thing that stuck. One of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that they mentioned balloon-like entities.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
What's
what do you
that,
think
right?
about that?
What do you?
Well,
I heard that too, and I did actually watch the rebroadcast of you and Tim, and I do concur with what Tim said. They left it vague, because a bag filled with air that's floating at high altitude looks like a balloon, right? Or you can't really distinguish it, especially if you're flying past it at just sub Mach 1 speeds in a jet or something. You can't really
mhm.
tell. So I think there was a choice of terms. I don't think that they were trying to cover up something more
If they,
sinister or mysterious. I think they were just saying that, hey, a lot of these things may look like a balloon, but they're really not, but they're still something um, that can be explained, right?
Yeah, it was just the choice of words. Entity just gets me. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know.
if
It
you want to
almost
say
sounds like
plastic
it's alive,
bags,
right? It's like
yeah.
a
So
living
if
thing.
you're talk about plastic bags and things like that, maybe balloon-like objects. They had said airborne clutter before, things like that. I mean,
Hmm.
entities is kind of a strong word.
It implies a living thing. I agree with you. It
What
was
we
a weird
what we'll
word.
do, I'm gonna parking lot that just because
Yes.
I want to know later in the year if that really even meant anything. So I guess the good thing about, I was thinking about this too, which we didn't talk about last week, is that being that the UAP report was late,
Hmm.
which was a bad thing. The good thing is, I guess, we're that much closer to getting the next one. So the next one should be within just a few months here. So I guess that's something bright or good to look forward to.
Well,
But
they're obligated for once a year. So right now, I don't know when that clock started. If it started in December with the passage of the NDAA, or if it started in October. So it's an annual report.
mm,
So yeah,
uh,
there's that was also a little bit disappointing to me. It's like, okay, so there's less talk going to happen now, but
well,
less reports frequency now.
is it written that it's by this specific date? So is it by this date written?
The date I didn't see.
Okay,
I believe it's in there in the NDA, and we did a deep dive into that, and I forget exactly what it said because I'm a little, uh, I forgot what we had previously
sure,
researched there a month
sure.
ago, but it's in there, and it does say annual. I don't know
Okay.
when the clock started though on that one. Clearly, they're late on this one, and I don't know if the clock didn't start again on October. It's something. Maybe it's like December or January 1st. So anyhow,
Yeah, well, I'll tell
we
you, we have expectations for the next one, so I'm sure we'll discuss this multiple times throughout the year. But one thing I did want to get into, as we're trying something new here today. Obviously, we're here on a Sunday; it's early. Hopefully, we get some of our viewers from overseas and other
hmm
regions. Maybe they can join in as well. But what I wanted to look at is, as it shows below, bottom of the screen there, this week in disclosure news. What were some of the things that stood out to you, or had you had a chance to even, focus on anything that has happened this week?
uh, quickly, I did take a look at a few things, and these are topics you're already going to discuss. I think the San Marino UN
Yeah,
proposal that they passed in their parliament that they now want to submit to the general secretary or the General Assembly of the UN this year,
and
as
the
far as
Mosul order.
establishing a UAP program. I watched that. I thought that was significant. Lou Elizondo has some his involvement there from a year ago, and that was that. And then I was looking if there had been any other current events as far as whistleblowers or anybody else coming forward. And the Mosul, Iraq video that I guess was from 2016 you're going to talk about, that also got publicized this week, and Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp talked about that. I watched that. So there's some, nothing cutting edge, right? But as far as this month of 2023, most of the stuff that I've seen had already happened or was in process, right? So yeah,
Mm.
you've got the news, man. So bring me up to speed, please.
Yeah, I do actually. I have a few things that I definitely put together, and obviously the first thing was going to be talking about the Mosul orb. I know other people have talked about it already, and kind of just wanted to give my perspective on it. So for those and first, before I jump into that, I gotta say what's up to Magneticus Attractus out there.
Absolutely.
Love you, guy. Thanks for the support. Thanks for stopping through. Hopefully, we got something good for you today. So jumping into that, what I'm going to do, I have a few things here. Let me bring up the photo. Okay, so this is what was supposed to have been identified as I guess this is military video or image for one. So I guess we can take that to the bank. and it does display. Let me get the branding off of here so we can see a little more clearly. But it does display a metal object here, and let's remove that. Yeah, okay. So looking at this, did they ever? And I tried to look back to get this information, but I'm not sure. Did they ever say how big they thought this object was? I don't think they really went into detail, did they?
Not that I could see. I looked for that too. This was from April of 2016, and it was a shot from reconnaissance aircraft US, an MC-12 it's called, it's like an AWACS, but much smaller. And no, they didn't talk about size. Obviously, you can kind of use the perspective of the city street there, but you don't know if it's
how high
close
up
to you, right?
Yeah.
It looks like it's above the ground since its focus is different than the ground shot, obviously. So, but we don't know how big it might be, and I don't know if I'm sure they had a range on it, or maybe they didn't. If it doesn't respond to radar, and then they could triangulate how big it is based upon how much of the frame it took up. But I didn't see anything written up on that.
Yeah, man. Geneticus says, "Look at all the shadows," and I did look at that. And that's why I feel like for sure this is definitely authentic. I checked all the shadows of all the different objects there. The sun, where it glares off of the object from the top. I mean, this is definitely seems to be real deal. What I would do, and actually what we can do, this may actually explain a lot of this here. I have the clip from the Weaponized podcast. George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell started their new podcast. So hopefully that this is a platform where they will start feeding us some of this, some of these videos and things that we've been looking for. And it looks like maybe that's what they're going to do.
Do you have the actual clip?
I do. I'm going to run. Well,
I haven't seen it yet, so it's
a little longer than that. So Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, please don't copyright strike us for this, but I do want to get the message out there. Here we go.
And this is Weaponized. I think we should try to give people something that they didn't have yesterday, something that's new today, and kind of describe a little bit about it. There'll be more context put out about it soon. But I think
we want to encourage people to go ahead and continue to reach out to us and send us information, and we will protect your identity if that's necessary, protect the source of the information. A lot of that information is coming into both of us, and we're going to give an example.
Yeah, so when people come with information, in this case, to me, an image, I need to make sure if this is a legitimate image and story behind it. It is a military filmed image, an intelligence agency filmed image, and it's called the Mosul Orb.
Mosul, Iraq.
Correct. Yeah, this is an image taken over northern Iraq. And this is fine to put out, the image itself, and I have some detailed information about it, but here's the very basics. This is in the UFO category within our intelligence community. This is an example of one of the UFOs that our military and intelligence community is looking at. It's just one of many images. This one is actually a still from a video. It's a brief video, maybe 4 seconds, where this orb or this metallic looking ball runs alongside a spy plane. And it is shown in this footage moving alongside the plane without dropping in altitude at all. I don't know if it is a UFO or what a UFO is. It's unidentified, but this is within, I don't know how to say this. This is part of the conversation of our intelligence community. This is an example of what they're looking at.
I know when I first saw it, when you first showed it to me, I thought to the USS Omaha. I mean, it's a heck of a lot similar to the craft that was flying around there.
Isn't it funny? UFOs are often reported in 4 basic shapes. You've got spheres, pyramids, cubes, and cigars. I mean, it's like these very fundamental shapes and totally not aerodynamic at all, right?
Or cubes in spheres. Yes, spheres in cubes. Yeah, those are not exactly aerodynamic.
Well, none of them. You got a flying cube, flying sphere, a flying pyramid and a flying cigar. I mean, these shapes are not aerodynamic.
So for purposes of the people listening by audio, they're not going to be able to see this image unless they look it up. But there it is.
Look it up.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
So,
look, there's no one piece of evidence or footage that is groundbreaking, especially still imagery. But I wanted people today to have a sense of some of the stuff that we're going to be releasing on this podcast. And again, this is a reconnaissance plane in northern Iraq. And this is from a 4-second video where this metallic sphere moves alongside the craft without any descent, any falling in any way. And this is one of the pieces of video and photographic evidence that is within the intelligence community saying, this is a UFO. We caught one. What can we determine from it? And there's just so much of this stuff. You'll never see this in the public realm other than right here.
Okay, so that is the video, them describing what the video pertains to. And what do you think about what was just said?
Well, I was hoping they'd actually show the video. I don't know if anyone actually got it. In other words,
I don't think so.
The 4-second clip, but I looked around a little, but no, the image is quite striking. Presuming it's real, I mean, you do kind of see a triangular shape, or George Knapp was talking about the pyramids of the Omaha situation, that incident. So yeah, you can kind of see that in there with the 4 dark corners. Obviously the sun's glinting off the top of it. You can't see the object's shadow on the ground. It's hard to make out. You could see shadows of things that are close to the ground, like the telephone pole there or what have you. But yeah, if there's a 4-second clip, I'd love to see that. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, it doesn't look like a drone. It's obviously, if it's flying alongside, it's got to have some sort of propulsion. It's not a balloon. So very intriguing.
Definitely very intriguing. And what I have also, Mateo, because when I was looking at that and I was listening to what it was they were saying, it kind of reminded me of a couple things. The Sean Cahill interview that he had done earlier in the week with Tim Ventura. We're going to take a look at a couple clips from there so you can see what he says. Yes. And then also, if you recall, earlier last year or mid last year, Ross Coulthart actually released his documentary with 7 News where he featured Gary Nolan, who had actually was going to do some sort of experiment on the metal sphere that the gentleman had. So we're going to look into both of those, kind of see potentially if these things are all maybe the same thing. But here goes Sean Cahill talking about that on the Tim Ventura podcast. Make sure you guys go over and subscribe to Tim Ventura. His link will be in the description of this video.
Yeah, there were a lot of overlaps. Most notably and most interestingly were the accounts of the silver balls, and I tend to call them silver basketballs, coming in and out of the water, especially the stories we received from fishermen out at Guadalupe Island who got really close looks at those. They said that at times they would come up out of the water about 50 feet away and immediately seem to translate right next to the fishing boat. And almost, they said it felt like it was regarding them or looking at them, and then zip away to parts unknown. But the most astonishing was that everywhere we went, and we took about 100 hours of interviews over the course of a few different visits, but everywhere we went, we found witnesses. It didn't matter where we went, whether it was kitchen staff or police officers or the fishermen's co-op or even out at the island.
Yeah, so that's what Sean Cahill had to say. He mentions these blue metallic basketball shaped orbs or just craft that have been coming out the water. So I'm just wondering if it's the same thing that Corbell has there captured on film. And it's referred to in another place here.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what they're. I guess they call it the Mosul orb, even though it's technically not in what we consider to be an orb. But I do want to know what we have a couple great guests out there that always have great opinions. Anybody out there, Magneticus, Greg, anybody want to chime in on what you think about this orb and any implications or that we may get from what Sean Cahill just said here? I'll give you guys a minute to type it up.
Magneticus did make a point about not being able to judge the orb based on the lack of a shadow, or at least you can't see if the shadow is on the ground somewhere in the frame or outside of the frame, since it's hard to.
And you need that data to triangulate or figure out. Okay,
right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell what's going on there. And not to say that the photo isn't legit. It's just that you can't really get perspective. As you pointed out in the beginning, is it 100 feet from the plane, or is it 10 feet off the ground? I mean, I'm sure it's not close to the ground. Otherwise, we would see the shadow. But
true. It's
got to be at altitude. And I looked at that article that was written, John Greenwald from the Black Vault wrote a nice summary article about this this image, and he had a whole laundry list of the statistics, including the plane type and the date and all of that, but no altitudes or anything like that. I think if you dig into that radar or into that image, I believe there are statistics in there. I didn't look close enough yet. In other words, where it reports the altitude of the plane, kind of in one of those red numbers that are surrounding the photo. I think it's in there, but I don't know what's what there. I hadn't sorted.
Oh, right. Okay, so the writing around there, they probably have it.
There
yes. Okay.
Is like a timestamp on a video you might take, or with an old camera. They have all that. It's kind of like a gun camera where you saw the FLIR videos where there's stuff there, right? Yeah, I see like time
all around the edges
and
there,
and this autofocus, and I don't know what.
So someone who's used to reading these numbers probably could tell you exactly what it is. So maybe
be an
we'll get that
altitude in there or something. Who knows? But yeah, and in any event, it's kind of unclear at the moment. Maybe Jeremy will eventually release the 4-second clip.
Jeremy. So that's essentially, it's a slow drip. Even with Jeremy, he's going to give us a little bit, hold it off, and then release the information later. So I guess we have to wait for that. But I'm grateful that he's back to giving us and showing us that he has more things in store. So we need as much help as we can get. Another instance I wanted to look at because so we had Sean Cahill talk about the silver ball. Now let's take a look at a clip from the Ross Coulthart documentary where Gary Nolan shows and talks about the ball. Let's take a look here.
Yes.
You think that's alien technology, don't you?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
That's a huge claim.
I can't imagine what else it is. I just can't imagine why something like this moves around, why it would flash light. But I have since seen videos on the internet of spheres just like this one flying in the air, doing all kinds of things. And apparently they're all over the world.
There's a long history in UFO sightings of, as well as the lenticular disc shape that's often seen in classic UFO sightings. In a lot of sightings, and these have been tracked by a British guy called Patrick Jackson, there are these metallic, silvery spheres seen adjacent to these objects. And so Patrick developed a theory that these spheres are some kind of protection mechanism, that they're stopping bad guys from entering Earth's atmosphere. We need to weigh it. 50 pounds exactly. I find that very strange. Exactly 50 pounds.
Me too.
If you hold it on there for me, mate. 32 inches, 81 centimetres. I've got a magnet here.
Magnetic.
It's moving.
If this is really alien technology with the ability of anti-gravity, our civilization needs this. And I think it should fall into the right hands.
So what I've got here, as you advised, I got scrapings off Jim's ball, the sphere. And these are the corrosion shavings.
Okay.
We've wrapped them in paper. I couldn't get a lot, but is this the machine you'd put them through?
Oh, yeah, and we only would be reading off like 50 nanometers of material, which is what's so great about this.
Definitely got that. If there is something anomalous about the sphere, if the sphere is alien, you can see that.
Right.
You'll let us know if there's anything anomalous.
Yes, it'll probably take me about a month.
It's possibly the tip of a huge discovery, if what Jim's saying is true.
If what is true, then you've got basically a UFO scout vehicle sitting in his house in Texas.
The sphere's now in the care of Professor Gary Nolan. And when we get those results, we'll be telling you what we know.
I don't know, man. Looking at that, those things are they all line up. I really feel like and then we get to it goes back to when I talked about in my UFO sighting video when we referred to shapes being redacted in that FOIA release. When you look at it, and if you think about it, there's a reason why they won't tell us what it was like. Oh, they should just be able to tell us what the shapes are. Well, as you're seeing, and as I pointed out in my video, as far as my objects go, there are a lot of different cases with those same exact objects. Same thing with these metal spheres. So if we're and this is actually a plus to us as just humanity and citizens, we're putting these pieces together ourselves. So now we have a catalog of shapes now that we understand are shapes that are being seen often. And so I feel like maybe these metal spheres, the ones that we just saw in 3 consecutive videos, are the exact same thing. It's hard to tell, obviously, with the Corbell photo, because once again, we can't tell perspective. But if you see the Ross Coulthart, they have one there, and it's about the size of a basketball. This Sean Cahill referred to his objects as being metallic basketballs. So I think we might be onto something there. What do you think?
It's possible. I mean, we don't know the size of the flying spheres yet, right? No one really does in this, because unless you have precise distance information and things like that, it's hard to tell. I think the spheres that Ross Coulthart had talked to this gentleman about, I believe he was in Texas, and then there were some more of these spheres apparently owned by somebody in Florida, and there seem to be ground-based spheres. And by the way, Gary Nolan was interviewed middle of this month by Jay Anderson in Project Unity in a great interview. And there he did ask Gary about an update on the analysis of the shavings that Ross provided him, and he didn't have one yet. So I purposely paid attention to that because I was curious what they were going to find. I mean, clearly the thing has got some steel in it since it's magnetic, but I don't know what Gary found. And then, of course, everybody's like, well, what's inside? So that hasn't been revealed yet. I mean, so, but yeah, the spheres are everywhere. Spheres are transmedium. Spheres are a part of this phenomenon, and a classic shape, as Jeremy Corbell mentioned, one of the most often seen shapes. So, yeah, it all could be very well related.
And I feel like, just like even with my own objects, I feel like those things are some sort of probe. So I don't feel like those things are potentially manned. So it's very possible that the ones they were finding there in Texas were probes that no longer functioned, or just fell out of the sky. That would make a lot of sense. Maybe we'll find that out. Magneticus asks, does it emit radiation of any kind? I hope that's something Gary Nolan would be testing, I would think. Do you think so? Okay.
We don't know yet, Magneticus. I didn't get any. I've been looking to see if there's any reporting that he's doing on this, and there hasn't really been any, other than the brief update he gave on that Project Unity video. I haven't seen anything. Yeah, obviously that's one of the first things you want to check. I mean, it'd be X-raying the thing, trying to look inside. Is it hollow? Is it solid? I mean, 50 pounds, that's a strange number, right? Why would they choose to make it that
50
weight? You know,
on the dot, 50.
why not
Yeah.
kilograms? You know, what, why did they choose that imperial unit, right? Who knows? But the point is we don't know anything yet. It seems very
That's a good
strange.
thought, though. That's a good thought.
Yeah,
And obviously, just like you said, all this information is new, so we won't have the answers. We'll just be speculating.
correct.
Magneticus says demon cores comes to mind.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with what demon cores are?
I'm not, but
Okay.
I'm not.
You can put it in the chat, Magneticus. I know your mind is you're
I've
a deep
heard of it.
thinker.
I've heard of them before, but I don't know what they are. Here's another thing you brought up to your point. You remember how a lot of UFO or UAP sightings sometimes, and I even believe Tim Senor mentioned this about his, a lot of times the actual object in the sky can sometimes be joined by orbs that are flying around it, right? Like they were drones that were doing surveillance in behalf of the main spaceship or the main.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
And I believe this is what you were alluding to. So yes, these orbs could be leftovers from that. These metal orbs that were found on the ground are no longer flying. And maybe when they're not in the presence of their own mothership, so to speak, they don't fly on their own.
Out of range, possibly.
Who
Yeah, yeah,
knows,
yeah.
right? I mean, there's probably all kinds of stuff where you'd have to imagine modern alien technology that's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years ahead of us. I'm sure they can beam energy into drone devices at a great distance to power them, right? In order to make them do whatever it is they're doing as far as surveillance is concerned. So
I'm going to tell you just what I think, and based off of what we're talking about here. Like I mentioned again, the objects that I saw before they turned into the formation you guys see on video, they were swarming each other like this, and it almost seemed like when you think about how you build up static electricity when things mingle and they just build up an energy. And I feel like maybe that's what they do. They were doing that, and they build up some sort of energy, and that's how they are able to continue to refuel themselves. That's just speculation at this point, but it makes sense, especially if they can at some point lose energy and fall out of the sky as their energy has been depleted. So I don't know.
I think I know what Magneticus is referring to in the Demon Core incident, and I'm going to look it up, but I believe, oh yes, I know about this. During, and it does look like that, during the development of the first atomic bomb.
And you can share if you want, Mateo, as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia article here I just pulled up. But during the, let me see if I can do that without fouling up my, I'll see if I can present here. Share screen, and let's see if it lets me pick one. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Can you see that?
I can. Let me scroll. All right. So there you go.
I'll leave it up.
Make it larger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I've heard of this before on other documentaries and I've read about it. So during the Manhattan Project, when they were trying to figure out how to make a nuclear weapon and they were using plutonium and uranium, when it comes to nuclear weapons, the key is attaining what's known as a critical mass. So once you have enough of the fuel coexisting or co-located, that's the word, it'll go unstable, right? The chain reaction will go unstable and it'll explode. So these demon cores, I mean, dude, people died doing this development back in the day in an effort to get the weapon ready in time to end the war. They literally were taking these cores and dropping, some of them were hollow, they were dropping additional material next to them to find out the point at which they become critical. I mean, literally, they were playing with fire this is where the Demon Core name came from. They were playing with fire where they were actually trying to bring the piece of material to the brink of critical mass so that they knew how to build the bomb. And the way the bomb works is you have one piece and a projectile that you shoot into it. This is how the first bomb was, the Hiroshima bomb. And you basically you melted two pieces together using like a gun technique where they launched a projectile to create the critical mass, and then it exploded. But prior to the bomb's construction, they were doing all this by hand. And people were being irradiated, and people died. Obviously it's horrible to be in amongst this. So, because all this stuff is, there's still chain reactions going on, but it's not runaway, right? It's not one where it leads to an explosion. But it's still radioactive like crazy. So that's what this thing is. So let me unshare here. But yeah, that was what that is. They do look like that.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that. Actually,
yeah, it does look like it.
Good freaking call, Magneticus, for
yeah,
sure.
It's something else, but who knows, right? I mean, I'm curious what Gary Nolan finds out about the material. Is it something of this earth? I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll end up touching back on that for sure. This will be something I'm sure we'll talk about multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do as well, because I know today's for any of those guys out there that are football fans, maybe your team is playing this afternoon. Yeah, unfortunately, mine's isn't Cowboys, but
Nope.
Our rivals, the 49ers, I want to watch them lose today. So we won't keep you guys too long. So let me get into, actually, there was Sean Cahill, another thing that I wanted to reference, a couple things, is when he spoke about, and before, let me preface this. So when I talked on the last video, I talked about Blue Knight entities and how they swarmed and how this could be potential. It felt like a bio sort of, like they were biological entities. And he kind of talks about this, and let's see what you think here.
And that's something that I've heard other places as well. And I think that that's something that Commander Fravor kind of reported as well, right? With the flight, it there's something organic to the way it moves, I guess.
Yeah, I could attribute that on the one hand to, all artificial systems that we are aware of have been organized and designed by organic systems. So of course we're gonna mimic what we know. But at the same time, I agree. There's a sense of life that isn't the same that you get with a helicopter or an airplane or a boat or even a fast moving drone per se. There is something very organic to that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and with that being said, because I had something that I wanted to talk about as far as that goes, because there is a belief that these objects, being, if they're biological beings, that they don't have it's supposed to be more advanced, and we are way more advanced. They wouldn't understand the benefit of something like biomimicry, right? So where it would benefit them or behoove them to try to blend in. And I feel like situations where, just like my sighting with their shaped like birds fly, is that a conscious decision by them to go under the radar and say, hey, these are things that we see in their skies, let's mimic what it is that they do to not stand out? Which brings me to the whole Lou Elizondo 5 Observables thing. And the reason why I put that in the title is because I feel like, and actually, let me go ahead and for those, because obviously there's a lot of people here who know about all this and who have heard this before. They know about the 5 Observables, but who I want to target at this moment would be the ones who are just coming aboard and may not know the full story here. So there's such thing as called 5 Observables. This is supposed to be the standard now for identifying UAP and reporting them. So let me just play this 30-second clip from Lou.
What separates these from anything else that we have in our current inventory is quite simple. There's 5 observables that associate, when you look at something as a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, as being truly unique. That's instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, low observability, trans-medium travel, the ability to operate in multiple environments or domains, and last but not least, in the vernacular, would be anti-gravity. The ability to fly with no wings, control surfaces, no obvious signs of propulsion, even, frankly, not even a cockpit.
So not even a cockpit is what he was saying at the end there. But yeah, so with that being said, I mean, when this initially came in, and I think we were very happy to have Lou come out to say, hey, these things are real, and hey, this is how we identify them. These 5 observables, they exhibit one of these things. And when he originally came out with that, that's at a time that I had not had a sighting to judge what he said against that. But then when I look around now that I've studied a lot more, I think that there are a lot of situations where they don't exhibit the 5 observables, and if they're intelligent enough to know that we're observing 5 things that they may do, then wouldn't they be smart enough to not exhibit the 5 observables? And I kind of feel like that guideline for using 5 observables would be something that should be something specifically pertaining to maybe how the government takes a look at these things and how they their criteria for saying something is official or not. But us as citizens who don't have access to radar equipment and all these things that we would be able to check off as one of the observables, I think that we should stay completely open to what it is that we're looking at in our own observations, because what I find that is around ufology and debunkers in general, the first thing they do is go to observables. Did it exhibit one of the 5 observables? And then if it didn't, then they automatically want to write that off, when I don't think that should be the case. And I think we kind of have been veered off the path by making this rule that 5 observables should be something that they should exhibit. If they don't, throw the video away. We don't care. We don't want to see it. And I think that's a problem. What do you think about that?
I love this topic, and I love the 5 observables, and I'm thankful to Lou for, creating these categories for all the reasons you just cited. The answer to your question is, what I think is, it's frustrating, right? Most of the sightings that we get from the public do not involve the 5 observables, as you've cited. They're usually things in the sky, lights in the sky that may be moving gently, or some of these other, or not moving at all, right? And even if it's a daylight sighting, it's not moving. It's not exhibiting the instantaneous acceleration or cloaking or any of those things. Although your sighting, you did witness what might be considered cloaking. And then, you can't really tell if it's anti-gravity or not. I think, for me personally, the smoking gun, if I were to have a sighting, I'd want to see that instantaneous acceleration. I'd want to see the thing doing what Commander Fravor saw, which was the tic-tac was bouncing around like a ping pong ball, he described it as, right? Darting back and forth. And then, of course, the Kevin Day's radar readings from the radar ship indicated that the tic-tacs came from 80,000 feet down to sea level in a second. So there's your, there's that observable, where it was hypersonic velocities. Perhaps what it is, Rob, and I thought about this before your show, yes, we're all walking around with high resolution cameras and video cameras now, right? Since, smartphones came into being. But no one's really caught this in the act, possibly because it's either happening too fast or people aren't thinking to take video of it. It could be over and done with before they get a chance to pull their phone out, right? So only the slow, less exciting sightings end up on on someone's camera phone. So it's tough. I don't like discounting, to get to your question more directly. I don't like people's sightings that don't exhibit the 5 observables being discounted. You have to treat them unbiased in order to understand if it is something prosaic or if it's something, out of this world. We have to treat them equally. But I want the smoking gun instantaneous. I want to see the Tic Tac darting around like a ping pong ball. I want to see that on a video.
It would be nice to see that. It would be exciting to see that. And it's something, and like I say, that's why I do love the 5 observables, because shoot, if you see one doing, and I don't think you need anyone to tell you that those are 5 observables. If you were to see something, do something like that, then you already understand that that's, you know what I mean? So
you're going to be losing. You'll automatically know it's not a conventional airplane or aircraft.
And I just want that message to get out there. So for people who are, if you're seeing something in the sky, videotape the thing, even if it doesn't show one of the 5 observables, still videotape it. And because it could still be something that's beneficial to the big picture. And I think that's why I say the 5 observables ends up being a barrier to us with us as citizens being able to collect our own data. Some of us that don't have the psionics cameras and some of the low level things that you may be able to use to verify that it exhibits one of the 5 observables. So another thing that bothered me, and I just wanted to touch before we move on, was I saw Mark D'Antonio. He has a sky watching channel, which you should check him out. He has a lot of great stuff on there, but he's used as a person to look over images and videos to see if they're fake or not. And one thing that kind of, usually he's right on point and I love everything he says, but one thing that I thought should be brought up is the fact that they had looked at a video, can't remember which one it was, but it was of an object that was in the sky at night. It was blinking what they considered to be a pattern, like FAA pattern sort of strobes. So he automatically says, hey, is blinking FAA strobe not a UAP? I don't believe that can just be a true solid statement, only because if they are more smart, if they're more advanced than us, they're definitely smarter than us. And so they would understand the benefit of blinking or mimicking that. They have lights. We know that they have different color lights. We know that for a fact. So if they were going to not want to stand out in the sky, they would mimic the other things they see in the sky. That would just be common sense.
What better thing to do?
Us on this level, we would understand that if we visited another planet, we were in their sky, we didn't want to stick out, we would try to blend in. Doesn't it make sense, right? What do you think?
Totally, absolutely. Why wouldn't they? I mean, it seems as if as time has gone on and the ability of the human race to be able to record what's going on in the skies, the more evasive the phenomenon has become, right? Like it's always, back in the day, it seemed like they were more out there and they didn't really care, but now they know people are watching more and there's ability to record more, so they've become a little bit more evasive. And it may be all for a reason, right? I mean, maybe they have to uncloak in order to make certain types of observations and can't be completely hidden. So when they're visible, then look like a bird, look like an airplane, do something that doesn't arouse any concern, right? Otherwise, if you're doing that's why the whole Tic Tac incident and all of that stuff, that seems as if in the sphere in the cube, or the cube in the sphere incident on the East Coast that Ryan Graves witnessed and his fighter pilots witnessed. Those, I wonder about those, because maybe it's because they're catching them when they're not sure that they're there, although you'd think they know an F-18 was coming. But it seems very interesting that the public doesn't get to see those, but the military does. And but that's just I
just feel like, and I'm going to keep pointing out as we go through these various shows, where I think the barriers are being put up and the misdirection is happening. because, like I said, waiting for a report that they can just kick down the road as long as they want to. Then time passes, 5 years passes, obviously 10 years, and we haven't moved anywhere. So something that would seem, and it's reverse psychology, because it's positioned to be something that they're selling to you as beneficial to the cause. But when you look deeper into it, you can see what it's going to block as far as free information for us. So I
Yes.
don't want to stay on this too long, because I have something great to get into. We want to talk about the UN and
Yes.
their focus on UFOs. So I want to end this segment here just with the last clip I have of Sean Cahill, because he discusses his efforts and Lou's efforts, what they've been doing lately, and take a look at this, and we'll come right back.
What comes next for you? And with your intuition, what do you think that we can expect to see in this ongoing UAP story?
Well, I'll say that we didn't expect to get as far as fast as we did. So in a lot of ways, I've been really considering taking a step back and exiting from this. We never thought we would get as the amazing amount of response that we did, and plus to have it in law, and to have it be, have the government have it where it's supposed to be in the right oversight. But it looks like we're going to move into the international piece now. This is not just America's problem.
Yeah.
This is not an issue that's just centered here, whether or not we have, the largest military or the best sensors or the most people looking up at the sky. I don't know. But we've been working the last few years to build the same kind of networks in Great Britain and in Europe that we were building here and I'm sure you've seen recently the Project Titan is moving forward with the country of San Marino and the United Nations. So I think that if I were a betting man, I would say that this is not going to go away. It's going to be up to the American people and the American government to make sure that the proper oversight occurs here in the United States. But it's time that we moved onto the international stage. There are other governments out there, other programs, other people, other foundations, and other groups that can bring their acumen to bear on this. And it's most definitely a global problem. So the United Nations should be involved.
So pretty much kind of confirms what they will be doing and what the focus will be. I think it's the right choice. And I talked about that with Tim last week when he informed me of this, because I had no idea that this was going on, that the conversation should be moved to the global stage. That's where it should be happening to begin with. So it's just good to know that that's what they're going to do, and that there's something that we can look forward to with multiple nations coming together to try to further the conversation and kind of let everyone know at once, hey, this is what. So that's going down the right path. What do you think about that?
I love it. I mean, we're always wondering how transparent and forthcoming our own government's going to be, in spite of the legislation and the whistleblower acts and all of the great things and the positive aspects of the most recent UAP report. If you can, because we're unsure what will come of all that, getting it onto the world stage at the UN via this Project Titan from the small little country contained within the borders of Italy known as San Marino, that would be huge, right? Because we all have, for those of us who are into this phenomenon and have studied its history, many other countries have been more forthcoming with their information about UAP over the years. Now it seems the U.S. has jumped to the front, right? But there's a lot out there that's just not part of it's not just a U.S. issue, as Sean Cahill said. It's a worldwide thing. So getting it on the floor of the UN General Assembly, that would be great, right? Only good can come from that. And as you and I have always ascribed to and looked for, this is for the greater good of humanity. And the UN is there for the greater good of humanity and the world, right? This is the organization that's trying to keep the planet from destroying itself and keep everybody on in order, right? So this is a great place for the topic to go. So I'm eager to see what happens. I don't know when the General Assembly begins this year, but San Marino have passed in their parliament, per the article you're presenting there from Liberation Times, that they're going to bring it to the UN General Assembly, and there it'll get considered.
Yes. And I kind of wanted to go over that real quick,
go.
just for those who don't know.
Sure. Go for it.
Yeah. So, okay. So looking at this, so obviously we just talked about, well, Cahill just talked about this Project Titan approved by San Marino. So UFOs set to be discussed at United Nations for first time since 1978. So think about that. It's 45 years ago. They were at the same point that we're at today. And they were able, obviously we weren't as close to potential disclosure as we are now, but just the fact that they galvanized a movement to have this discussed on a global stage, and how we'll get into the story, but you'll see who were the ones who kind of wanted to put the lid on this and not get this to go forward. So this is a great article written by Christopher Sharp. I'll go ahead and kind of just read through it. So it says, today the Parliament of San Marino voted in favor to participate in Project Titan, meaning San Marino will submit a proposal to the UN for the creation of a permanent office tasked with the preparation of periodic global conferences dedicated to the scientific study of UFOs, otherwise known as unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. In total, 25 members voted in favor of the project, whilst 2 abstained and 2 voted against. I wonder, the 2 that voted against can't subhuman. So, okay. The proposal will now be submitted to UN Secretary General before undergoing a preliminary examination and discussion. Following this, the proposal would be submitted to a vote at the General Assembly. If successfully passed, the United Nations would run the new office, which organizes periodic conferences hosted by San Marino, becoming the Geneva of global UAP studies. The conference would be accessible to private and state-backed researchers and organizations. Also known as Project Titan, the proposal was created and managed by Paolo Guizzardi on behalf of the Centro Ufologico Nazionale of Italy. If I probably messed that up, I'm sure I did. Italy's main ufological organization, and the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, ICER. Speaking to the Liberation Times about Project Titan's approval by San Marino, Guizzardi commented, today the nation of San Marino has made a momentous decision, meaning the UFO phenomenon will now be discussed where it belongs, at the United Nations, the highest council of humanity. I couldn't agree more. This project is hugely important in today's world when nations are observing trans-medium objects in their skies and seas. Against the backdrop of conflicts like in Ukraine, it is a topic which can promote positive cooperation so that we can help solve an enigma which we all face. This one topic can unite our planet and counter our tendency for conflict. True statements. Greeting the news, former ATIP director Lou Elizondo told the Liberation Times, by now it should be evident that the UAP phenomenon is not only an issue for the U.S. Today, I would like to congratulate the people of San Marino for another historic milestone in this discussion. It should be no surprise that the world's longest-standing republic is now championing the UAP cause on behalf of the world. I would also like to thank my dear friend Paolo Guizzardi and his colleagues for their tireless efforts. We have been working this issue diligently for several years and consider this a big win for all of humanity. 2023 is already turning out to be a monumental year for this topic, and I am proud to have been an integral part of Project Titan from its inception. And the government of San Marino is no stranger to UAP and has been sponsoring symposiums on the topic for 30 years, organized by Italy's CUN. Liberation Times understands that the Project Titan proposal was presented by San Marino's Ministry of Culture, which made the case for the project's approval. The proposal marks the first time since 1978 that the topic of UAP has been raised for discussion at the UN, In 1978, Grenada's UN UAP initiative, led by its then Prime Minister Sir Eric Gary, who we will be talking about next here, ultimately failed following fierce opposition from the United Kingdom. Imagine that. United Kingdom tried to squash this back in 1978. And for what I understand, there was a second member that tried to do the same thing. Can you guess who that was? The United States of America tried to quash this proposal to have UAP and UFOs looked at on an international stage 50 years ago. So just understand that, because we're at a point right now, as Elizondo said, where this is now going to happen again. So let me go ahead and bring us back in here so we can look at this. So what do you think about that, Mateo? What do you think about that article? Did you pick anything from that? And what do you think?
Few things, just on your final point there. I think the U.S. is in a much different position and modus operandi as far as UAP and the phenomenon, and I highly doubt they will squash any efforts in the UN this time. I wouldn't expect it, right? Because in 1978, that was during the days of the cover-up, right? Which we all know what's been going on for the past 70 plus years, 75 years. So that didn't surprise me. But what's going on now may actually it'll get some support. And San Marino is, I liked the term in the article you were reading about them wanting to be the Geneva of UAP studies, right? They're mimicking what Switzerland did and the Geneva Convention did during World War II. Remember, Switzerland was neutral and they tried to referee the war, which I don't know how possible that is, but you know what I'm saying. They were a neutral country. And so San Marino wants to play that role in this study. And since they're part of that, whatever it is, 198 or 200 countries that are member of the UN, which is which makes up pretty much the whole world, they can go in and propose anything they want. They have just as big of a right to propose something to be part of the UN as does the United States, China, Russia, or any other big country. So I really think this is a great move. The kudos to San Marino for having the fortitude to go forward with this, and only good things can come of it. And it'll be very interesting to see what the Secretary General says. It has to get past him first, and then we'll move on to the General Assembly. And there, I don't know what sort of voting majority is required to instill this or to pass this, so to speak, at the General Assembly. But I'm willing to bet money there's going to be a lot of countries in support of this, and I would be shocked if it wasn't a majority.
Okay, Magneticus says, I know the Minutemen program has no maintenance plan past 2030. Will it use them or lose them? Do you know anything about the Minutemen program?
Yeah, Magneticus was likening the Titan project of San Marino to an old missile program of the United States.
Oh, okay.
And there's Titans and there's Nikes and there's Minutemen. So he's citing a different. I think he brought that up because, what's in a name? Why would they name it the Titan project? I highly doubt it probably has more to do with the gods of and the other figures that Titan represents, right? Moon of Jupiter and all of that. It probably has more to do with that, not to do with missiles.
Well, with that being said, we're going to jump in, because if you saw the last line of that article by Christopher Sharp over Liberation Times mentioned the 1978 incident where they had brought this to the UN, Sir Eric Gary. And I actually wanted to go over that because I don't know if a lot of people even know about that story. I know it was new to me, but I kind of want to go over that. So I'm going to take you through some slides here, and I'm going to read to you what happened then, and then we'll discuss it afterwards. Because if you need to stop me, you want to make a point about anything that's being said, just let me know. We'll stop right there and talk about it.
No problem. Go for it.
All right, here we go. So, all right. So we have Sir Eric Gary, who is the Prime Minister of Grenada, I think from 1974 to 1979. He was also a member of the UN. And let me get this up here, so, and my branding off, and we will discuss this. Let's see. All right, so very relatable to what's about to happen now. Same situation 50 years ago. Let's take a look at it, and let's see what type of adversity was faced then. So back in the late 1970s, Sir Eric Gary, the Prime Minister of Grenada, led an effort to enlist the United Nations into a UAP inquiry. This effort culminated in a November 1978 presentation at a UN special committee by Gary and several prominent UAP researchers. They use UAP, we're going to say UFO. Several prominent UFO researchers to propose a UFO investigation and information agency within the UN. Gary, under pressure from the US and UK, soon downgraded his proposal, and months later, as a revolutionary coup toppled his regime in Grenada, he lost the chance to further advocate for UFO inquiry at the UN. So Gary became widely known, and actually, let's see if we can, I have an image of him. This is him here. So Gary became widely known to UAP researchers at the first International Congress on UFO Phenomenon held in Acapulco, Mexico in April 1977. Gary, who was one of the Congress's speakers and the only head of state present, delivered a speech that put forth his vision of the universe, one that incorporated UFOs, divinity, and psychic phenomena. For Gary, UFOs were extraterrestrial spacecrafts. More importantly, they were like humans, manifestations of a divine, loving, and all-encompassing intelligence. In this way, Gary argued UFO inquiry was exploration of God's divine plan. He says, I have come to believe, Gary told the Congress, that man is surrounded everywhere by superior forces of which he himself forms a part. UFOs, Gary said, as space vehicles used by highly intelligent aliens of extraterrestrial origin, may come with, quote, hostile intent, although we hope not, or perhaps, he said, to share with us the universal intelligence and so bring us closer in oneness with the brotherhood of man and the universe of the divine spirit. So he was on the right path, and he feels a lot like I feel about this. But Gary also told the Congress that he would use his position at Grenada as head of state to ask the UN, as he had in years prior, to create an international agency to coordinate UFO investigation and research to disseminate findings. Such an agency, Gary said, would not be an exercise in mere data collection, but a grand-scale effort for humanity to align itself with God's cosmic intelligence. The Acapulco Congress concluded with the resolution signed by the full panel speakers, which included astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek, head of the Center of UFO Studies, or CUFOS, and former UFO consultant of the United States Air Force, the best-selling Swiss author Eric von Daniken, an early proponent of the ancient astronaut theory, Reverend Salvador Frisido, a former Jesuit priest who saw UFO as a manifestation of the collective unconscious, and astronomer and data scientist Dr. Jacques Vallée, to support Prime Minister Gary in his declared intent to enlist the powers of the UN in getting to the bottom of the phenomena. Now, Gary, who had become Prime Minister of Grenada in 1974, had already leveraged his position to call on the UN to coordinate international UAP and psychic research in 1975 and 1976. To Gary, gathering support from the Acapulco Congress for a renewed effort was another step in fulfilling God's plan for him, Grenada, humankind, and the universe. And so, who is that? That's Dr. Gary with who else but President Jimmy Carter. So getting into that, is he actually, famously Carter had his own UFO sighting, so he was pretty much in on the idea of what Gary was talking about here. So in a letter dated July 14th, 1977, a few months after the Acapulco Congress, Gary proposed to the UN General Assembly to establish, to the UN General Assembly, the establishment of its own UAP investigation and information agency. Over the next several months, he proposed the proposal would work its way through the UN committees while Gary built support. Now, this is him meeting Carter. So on September 9th, 1977, Gary met with U.S. President Jimmy Carter at the White House. After discussing regional treaties in the presence of Marxist rebels in Grenada, Gary asked Carter whether he could count on the U.S. president's support for his UN resolution for the International UFO investigative body, according to a memorandum of the conversation preserved by the U.S. Department of State. Gary allegedly told Carter that he had not seen a UAP, but that he had spoken with UAP entities or UFO entities. He says they are not bad people, according to Frank Ortiz, the U.S. ambassador to Barbados and Grenada, who was present during the conversation. Carter responded that, as he publicly stated, he once saw a UAP while driving at night in Georgia. That's the famous case that that we know him for. Secretary of State Cyrus Vance, also present at the meeting, added to the conversation that he recalled that U.S. Air Force had conducted a UFO study that concluded that 5% or so of the studied accounts remained unexplained, according to the memorandum. Sounds so familiar to what the info that we get today. Carter asked Vance to get Gary a copy of the study, and Gary took the opportunity to reiterate his conviction that such investigations were needed on an international scale. Gary then segued into a discussion of God's creation and other planets and asked Carter whether he would also support an international convocation of theologians to arrive upon a common consensus of God, according to the memorandum. Now, according to Ortiz, Gary told Carter the God spoke directly to him, and Carter responded that his sister, Ruth Carter Stapleton, made the same claim. The conversation went into psychic matters. Ortiz says, I couldn't believe my ears. Okay, so no, out the United Nations. So he has support of Gary Carter. They've aligned on UFOs and the importance of what this means to the people and humanity. So he has his back on that. Now, at the United Nations, in the following month, Gary was back in New York at the UN. His proposal had moved to the special political committee that would come up for discussion at 3 meetings between November 28th and December 6th. Gary declared once again in a speech to the General Assembly that he was a UFO witness. He says, I have myself seen an unified flying object, and I have been overwhelmed by what I have seen, Gary said, according to the New York Times. New York Times, okay. Gary's declaration met with little reaction from the gathered diplomats. The Times report heavily implies that UN delegates had become accustomed to Gary's addresses on topics ranging from UFO to mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle and the importance of psychic research. So it sounds like they were kind of giving him the snicker behind the back sort of thing and not really taking this thing seriously, a lot of the delegates at the UN. However, one-on-one, Gary reportedly told his UN colleagues that persons from outer space are studying us or perhaps living among us. However, after the special political committee meeting in November and December, Gary said he would not pursue a vote on the proposal. According to declassified U.S. State Department cables, the miss-off, meaning the U.S. mission to the UN, had convinced Gary to water down his attempt. On December 13th, the General Assembly adopted Gary's proposed UFO agency as recommendation. For 1977, Gary's UFO efforts had come to a close. Now, before Gary left the U.S. for home, he met with a person named Lee Spiegel, a documentarian and UFO investigator. According to Spiegel's account, he promised to help Gary mount another effort at the UN in the following year. The two allegedly shook hands over the deal. Spiegel got work organizing a video presentation of UAP evidence and bringing on board experts such as J. Allen Hynek and compelling UFO witnesses such as astronaut Gordon Cooper. Now, according to Spiegel, famed film director Steven Spielberg got wind of the upcoming UN effort, and Spielberg had just released the massively successful contactee epic Close Encounters of the Third Kind, for which J. Allen Hynek and UAP expert data scientist Jacques Vallée served as advisors. Now, Hynek also had a cameo in the film. Spiegel says that he, Vallée, and Hynek visited Spielberg in Hollywood to discuss the UN effort and that Spielberg offered his help. According to Spiegel, Spielberg helped with graphics and information that made it into a film presentation Spiegel would share with the UN audience in 1978. So I was totally unaware of that. 1978, in early 1978, Gary once again proposed a UFO agency at the UN. As in previous year, the proposal moved to the Special Political Committee and was scheduled for discussion later in the year. This time, however, Gary met with UN Secretary Kurt Waldheim ahead of time. Gary revealed that with the help of Spiegel and others, he had planned a powerful presentation featuring several prominent UFO experts, as we have listed here on the screen. So the meeting with Waldheim occurred in July 14, 1978, and Gary attended with as pictured below. So on from left to right, we're looking at U.S. Air Force astronaut and UFO witness Colonel Gordon Cooper, astronomer and data scientist Dr. Jacques Vallée, astrophysicist Dr. Clyde Power, who led the GAIPAN, G-E-I-P-A-N, GAIPAN, which is a UFO investigation body under the French government. Next to him, we have J. Allen Hynek. We have Lee Spiegel, according to this. And then we have Dr. David Sanders, a psychologist at the University of Colorado and a principal investigator with the Condon Committees, a U.S. government-funded UFO research effort that ran in the late 1960s. With some variation, much of the same group of experts appeared again at the UN Special Political Committee on November 27, 1978, to take part in a presentation of support for the proposed agency. So we have the November presentation, which we'll move into here. This is Dr. Gary here. And let's see. Okay. So, so gathered in the fourth committee's chambers, Gary opened the presentation with his now well-worn call to action on UFOs. In particular, he cited an impetus, the case of Frederick Valentik, which is the next slide that we have here. So this guy right here, he made the newspapers in Australia. So according to this here, he's an Australian pilot who 1 month earlier, prior to this committee hearing, had disappeared along with this Cessna light aircraft over the Bass Strait after radioing that he was being followed by a UFO. So this guy just disappeared. According to Peter Robbins, a UFO enthusiast who was in the public audience, let me bring it here. Gary referred to Valentik while staring directly at the Australian delegation. The Australian representative, Robbins says, glared back with straight-faced rage. They did not want to discuss the fact that this had happened, that this pilot had gone missing after stating that he was being followed by UFO. So Hynek gave a brief survey of the evidence in support. It's J. Allen Hynek. Yeah, Hynek gave a brief survey and evidence in support of serious UFO inquiry, including CUFO's own UFO CAT, a database of thousands of vetted sightings from over 130 countries. He also told diplomats of his own experience as a UFO skeptic who once saw the phenomenon as a mental aberration and public nuisance, but who, after years of debunking UAP reports on behalf of the United States Air Force, was compelled by the overwhelming evidence that included radar readings, landing traces, and reliable witness reports from pilots, astronomers, and astronauts to change course and study this most outstanding challenge to current science. We move on to Jacques Vallée. So Vallée, in his address to the committee, he warned of the sociological impact of the phenomenon in the absence of scientific inquiry. Around the world, enormous numbers of people were developing a social belief system in the expectation of space visitors, Vallée said. So far, Vallée said, science had excused itself from the conversation, and so the belief was not only gaining hold without rigorous research and open rational discourse, but was doing so at the expense of science's claim to understanding reality. He says, only an open exchange of information on the subject could now correct that dangerous trend, Vallée said. Vallée kept a diary of his impressions on the day, and in it, he said the following presenter, who was a guy who was there with them at this hearing, and he actually speaks next. He is U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Larry Coyne. I don't know if you've heard of him, but I have a little something on him that we're going to take a look at. But he appeared to have the greatest impact on the committee. In scrupulous, apparently embellished terms, Coyne told of his personal experience with an alleged UFO. According to Coyne, he was piloting an Army helicopter in central Ohio with a crew of 4 on October 18th, 1973, when he spotted a red light in the sky. This is him. And this is apparently what he saw, if you take a look at the image on the screen. The light had closed in on the helicopter, and despite Coyne's attempts to wrestle the helicopter away from the light's path, he found himself on a collision course with the UAP. Coyne attempted to radio the base, but the radio cut out. The helicopter, Coyne said, suddenly ascended, so it started going up. Now, the UFO, it seemed, was drawing them upwards. The altimeter indicated 2,000 feet elevation. Then it showed 3,800 feet elevation, at which point an apparent collision shocked the helicopter and its crew. The helicopter then descended, and Coyne regained control as the UAP disappeared into the western sky. So I'm going to stop right there for a second, because Coyne actually ended up doing a segment on this, and this is pretty old. He actually did this, I believe, back in the 80s, but he discusses this incident, and it's going to be a few minutes here. Let's take a look at that real quick, and we'll finish this up.
Among the many reports of UFOs in late 1973, one incident would stand out because of the credibility of the 4 witnesses. This is Major Coyne, Army helicopter pilot. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Arrigo Jetsi, Air Medic Sergeant Healy, and Robert Janicek. These men had just finished their annual flight physical early that day and were found fit and sound of mind. They would take off from Port Columbus Airport about 10:30 p.m. But what was about to follow, and the subsequent report they filed, would put to the test the credibility of these men.
Approximately 8 miles east of Mansfield, our crew chief, Sergeant Robert Janicek, observed a red light on the east horizon.
Did you gentlemen see the same red light?
Yes, I did. Our helicopter was flying on a northerly heading. We were flying at an altitude of 2,500 feet. He indicated that the light seemed to be facing the helicopter, moving along in a parallel direction with our aircraft.
Which direction from the helicopter was it at?
Moving, it was to our right, to the right side of the helicopter, and it was moving with us as we were heading north towards Cleveland. And at this time, he indicated that the light changed its direction and was coming directly at the helicopter at the same altitude. And as the helicopter was maintaining a speed of 90 knots, the object came at a terrific speed from the horizon. We estimated 15 miles. Visibility was reported 15 miles that night.
Did you gentlemen see the object at this time, after it had been pointed out by the sergeant?
No, not at that time. I was flying left seat or co-pilot, and visibility from that seat from an object approaching from the right is rather limited. So I was having difficulty seeing the object. And it was for that reason that Major Coyne did take the aircraft or the controls from me. I grabbed the controls from Lieutenant Jutzi because I thought it was going to hit us. I braced for impact. With that, I pushed the collective down to get the helicopter to start to descend. I then looked at the altimeter. It was showing 1,700 feet. We were descending 1,000 feet a minute. The helicopter began to descend, and as this object came at the helicopter, it seemed to descend with the helicopter. When the helicopter went down, the object came down, but it still came directly at our broadside, as if to hit the helicopter from the right side.
Did anyone else see the object at this time?
Yes, I was watching it come on out of the east horizon. And the only thing I felt was when the skipper took over the controls and we started to auto-rotate down, and I'd never been involved in a mid-air collision, so I was just watching this thing come at us. And it was at this time a light came, swung 90 degrees from the UFO towards the helicopter. And it came in through the front of the plexiglass, and the entire cabin inside turned green from the light. It was a pyramid-shaped type of light that beamed down and came through the front of the helicopter.
How long was your aircraft bathed in this beam?
The light that came into the cockpit apparently lasted only for a few seconds, but it was enough time that I observed the red instrument panel lights utilized for night flying to be absorbed by the green light.
Was it possible for you to determine the outline of this object against the star background?
Yes, sir. It was a cigar-shaped object, like a symmetrical airfoil with the dome on it. It was a solid object. It was a metallic structure to it. And you could see lights reflecting off the structure, and you could not see any of the stars or behind the object itself.
Well, while all this was going on, what was the attitude of the helicopter?
Apparently, when we were supposed to be descending at 2,000 feet a minute at 100 knots, we were climbing at 1,000 feet a minute with the controls still established for a descent. And we went from 1,700 feet up to 3,500 feet and topped out at 3,800 feet. I would like to stress one important fact, and that is there is approximately 20 years of Army aviation experience between the 4 men on board the helicopter that night. We have been trained to follow procedures and regulations in reporting incidences, regardless of how they're accepted. And we tried to follow those procedures. And we reported the incident as it occurred and have avoided any speculation on the subject.
What you're witnessing is based on fact. Some will find it fascinating. Some may find it frightening. But it is all true. With special thanks to NASA and the Department of Defense for their cooperation in our search for UFOs. It has begun.
All right, so that was a video presentation at the time that it happened, and that's him verbatim, word of mouth, saying exactly what happened. And if you look here at the UN hearing, that is him speaking or presenting to the UN. So going back to what this UFO looked like again, this is what he says when he mentions the steady bright red light on the leading edge, which is over on the far left, and then the beam, the steady bright white light, and then the steady light, the green light that he said was a beam that kind of, I guess, scanned the inside of the helicopter before it ended up flying off. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this here. So, okay, so later, according to Valet, a diplomat asked Coyne what he went through, what went through his mind as the helicopter ended up shooting straight upwards. This is what Coyne said. He said, "Sir, I closed my eyes and prepared to die," Coyne responded, according to Valet. Nuclear physicist Dr. Stanton Friedman was also there, and he addressed the committee. I think we have that here. There he is on the far left, Stanton, the late, great Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman addressed the committee, as did Lee Spiegel, sharing the film, the one that Spielberg helped him with. sharing a film with photographic evidence of UFO, during which the committee chamber took the appearance of the inside of a spaceship with the square windows and or square windows of the interpreters high around the ceiling, looking like portholes bathed in soft light, Vallée recalled. So neither Friedman nor Spiegel's presentation was included in the verbatim record. All right, so now just moving on. So that's the story about them. Now, as far as the US and the UK and how they played into what was going on at that time. So according to Vallée's account, a US official at the UN approached Sir Eric Gary, and told him plainly that the expense of a UFO agency would jeopardize support for the UN in the US Congress. Sadly. Similarly, the UK foreign policy officials broadly agreed that a UFO agency would be an embarrassment and drain on the UN and the UK. Okay, and the UK UN mission worked behind the scenes to deep six Gary's proposal. According to separate analysis of declassified British government documents from the UK National Archives by the Enigma Labs, the BBC, the New York Times, and journalist Antonio Huneeus, who also covered the November 1978 UN meeting. An official telex from London, for example, instructed the UK mission to attempt to coordinate opposition with the Nine, meaning the 9 core states of the European community, including Belgium, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and Western Germany. And as an alternative, the UK was considering a plan to control the selection of the proposed UFO agency's experts. However, the creation of the agency never came to a vote. The UN General Assembly adopted Gary's proposal as nothing more than invitation to interested member states to share research on extraterrestrial life, including unidentified flying objects, and to inform the Secretary General, and to join a discussion to be held by Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space at the 34th session of the General Assembly. As something of a coda, Gary called for 1978 to be designated as the year of the UFO. Meanwhile, he had concerns closer to home. So essentially what ended up happening with him is, while he's doing this and he's championing for UFOs to be looked at the UN, he, back in his country of Grenada, there's a coup being formed to get him out of power. And they actually did that. So this mission never got to become to fruition. And you saw in this report here that the UN and the UK were the 2 countries that were just opposed against. And for what I read, they were actually the only 2 countries that ended up opposing this proposition. So that's a little history on that. I mean, going back, so when you think about that, you see 50 years ago, essentially, we were at the same point that we're at today. And you saw who were the powers that be that wanted to step in and nix the conversation. So what do you think about that, Mateo? What are your views on that with the information we just provided here?
First of all, Rob, I want to say that was an awesome presentation. I learned a lot. I was not entirely familiar with what went on at this time with the whole Sir Eric Gary UN legislation. And yes, it was right on the heels of his overthrow of the coup in 1979 is when he ultimately was in the U.S. and couldn't get back in until whatever it was, years later.
3 or 4 years later, exactly.
Yeah, the U.S. there had to be military intervention. It was a big mess. Unbelievable. First off, my first reaction to this is Sir Eric Gary was a man way ahead of his time, right?
Exactly.
Way ahead of his time. And it's no wonder, given what, the climate of UFO and UAP at that time, it's no wonder where it all ended up, right? It ended up trashed, or the Deep Six, as you read. It ended up not going forward because no one wanted this. And even with powerhouses like Dr. J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée and Steven Spielberg and Stanton Friedman behind it, those guys were obviously on the forefathers of the whole UAP UFO investigation, ufology in general. They were not taken seriously. So it's amazing. I just find it amazing. And so what he's did was basically what San Marino is doing now. And this is why you're going through it.
Yes.
He's basically said, hey, I have a seat at the table, be it the UN, right? I'm going to ask the UN to take up this topic because I think it's real. And what's even more striking, which you read that I thought was incredible, is some of the things that we, you, me, and everyone who's into this phenomenon, who is investigating it, are coming to grips with now. The fact that consciousness is involved, the fact that they may be walking amongst us, the fact that it's deeply tied to our religious faiths. See how he was likening it to God because he really didn't have anything else he could liken it to. Now we're saying, well, maybe it was a case of mistaken identity where UFOs or the phenomenon was perceived as gods or God. And now you hear all the words that are coming out of his mouth, which totally fit with what's going on today. But he was just doing it 45 years ago in a climate that was far less accepting, right? So I find it amazing. It's a great story. And the fact that they are bringing it up again now as San Marino moves forward with what they want to do this year is good, right? Because if you don't understand your history, you're destined to repeat it, right? As the saying goes. So
Exactly.
it's a spot on. And I got to give credit to this guy for being so far ahead of his time, Sir Eric Gary. And it's pretty impressive.
No, I agree. I mean, like the perfect words, way ahead of his time. We're talking 50 years ahead of his time. We're talking about what is this? Is maybe 30 years after Roswell, maybe barely. That's no time. So that he was on top of it from the very beginning, and it just, it's somebody like that. This pro humanity channel, so things that progress the positive movement of humanity or progression. And this guy is somebody who should be listed as a person that stood up to do that. And we need more guys like him to champion this. So I'm hoping Lou Elizondo is the new Sir Eric Gary. I'm hoping Sean Cahill is the new Sir Eric Gary, or whoever is going to be the one to step up and put themselves on the line like that to get the greater good of humanity pushed forward. So what I'm going to do here, and I was amazed when I read it, and I just knew that this was something that needed to get out to the public. So what I want to do here first is I have like one other small segment to get to after this, guys. So here's what I'm gonna do here. I want to stop real quick and just thank everybody who's been here so far. Magneticus, appreciate you like always. Terry Hall, really great guy, great friend to have. Anybody else who might be out there?
Greg is still here.
Who did? Oh, Greg O'Brien is still here. Greg O'Brien for sure. Tim Senor, anybody who's here now and who may come and be on Team Rewatch. Either way it goes, you guys, everyone, you guys are important to what happens here and how this thing moves. And I just want to do a quick call to action and just have the people who understand why this is important to humanity. If you could just reach out to someone who is close to you and maybe share this video with them, or have them come on and subscribe, because we really want to build this up, and because I think we're going to be pushing a lot of good messages and information to those who are well versed in the subject, who studied this forever, and then more importantly, or just as importantly, the ones who are just coming aboard and wanting to plug into this and figure out where they fit in on getting to where we need to get to here. So just wanted to stop and do that real quick. And we're trying something new here. So I have a segment here This kind of lighten up the mood a little bit. I have a segment which we'll be doing weekly, and this is called. Let me see. I'm gonna do that first. No, let me do this one first. We're gonna do Once Upon a Time in Ufology. So what this will do, this will be a segment where, for the people who are unaware of past events that may have happened in ufology, some important things that kind of led us to where we're going, we'll be covering those things weekly. And I thought there was no better place to start off with this than the Citizens for UFO Disclosure, the hearing that happened back in 2013 with a lot of ufology's top characters, the late great Stan Freeman, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe. There's some I'm forgetting. Who was Robert Salas?
John Callahan, the FAA guy, was there.
So many people that I'm sure if you have been following this forever, you are aware of this. But for those who want something to look into, and I swear it is at least 10 videos, I think they're all 2 hours each. But what I wanted to do is kind of highlight them and just run the trailer real quick so you can get an idea of what it was and why it should be important for you to go take a look at. So give me a second here and we'll run that. This is the citizens hearing on UFO disclosure.
The conclusion I've come to is incredibly wild, that those in charge have been successful in keeping secret the greatest story of mankind.
The evidence is overwhelming that Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft.
The CIA guy standing next to me says, we're confiscating all this data and you're all sworn to secrecy.
Every American and the whole world deserves the truth about non-humans interacting with this planet.
How long will current members of Congress and the public at large be content to roll over and be spoon-fed nonsense when in fact they deserve the truth?
And that is the worldview that is going to have to be addressed by our human family once we come to acknowledge.
Because it is a world phenomenon. And if we keep acting like it doesn't exist, then we all lose, the world loses.
Walking up to it and you touch it. What do you do? Touch it that? Do you grab it? Tell us about that.
Okay. I started doing the walk around 360 of the object, and as I came around, I seen there was an inscription on the front, and
this is what you saw, right?
That's what I saw. So I started walking around the craft, and I seen the glyphs, and as I ran my hand from the fabric of the craft, it was smooth to touch.
You ran your hands along it?
Oh, yeah.
I believe that the time is now to lift the veil of secrecy that has shrouded this subject for over 60 years, and the subject of UFOs should now be openly accepted in the mainstream media.
They are here to save us against the insanity of our leaders.
I agree with you. They should open those Roswell files.
There's only one way to regain trust. Find and tell the truth.
If it's out there, if it's real, we have a right to know.
What else can you say but freaking awesome? One of the pivotal
I saw that live.
Moment in history. Oh, you saw it live?
I saw it when it was done. When it was done, or when it was just recorded. I forget how. That was Stephen Bassett was the man who put that together.
Yes, 2013. Yep.
And I wasn't there, but I mean, it was. I don't know how we. YouTube was around at the time. It was something forget how it was broadcasted, if it was just recorded and shown later on, but it got on the news. Wasn't that long ago, right? Less than 10 years.
Yeah.
It's great segment, by the way, Rob. Love it. Once upon a time. I mean, history is important. And these
Exactly.
people, none of them changed their story. You know what it kind of reminded me of while watching this? It reminds me of Commander David Fravor and the Tic Tac incident. He's one of those
Exactly.
people who's why would he make that up? And the same is true for Robert Salas and James Pedeston, and from the Rendlesham Forest incident. Why would these people make that up and not change it? I mean, it changed their story in all the years that they were there. And then, of course, at the time when ufology was still kind of a back in the closet kind of thing, nobody wanted to talk about it, unlike what happened in 2017 when the lid got blown off. These people haven't changed their story. They're still around. I mean, except for obviously for Stanton Friedman.
Yeah.
But the point is the people who were witness to these events, they haven't changed. You still see Robert Salas do interviews, and he hasn't changed. He's not going to change his story. It's the same as it ever was. I just find it amazing.
The powerhouse lineup that they had there. They had the who's who of ufology.
Oh yeah,
they had
everybody.
all the old time investigators, researchers. They were all there in one place. What I would, and if you look at that, you could just look at that clip and then compare that to what we had at our U.S. public hearing, and it's not even close.
Not even close. No,
so
it pales in comparison.
I'm hoping Congress, I would hope Congress has been made aware of that, and they've gone back to watch those if they didn't watch them live when they happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everyone out there, anyone who is on this mission with us to get disclosure and to progress humanity, this is an important collection of videos that you should take the time to go and watch. I think there's at least 10 of them. They broke them into,
yes.
It was like a few different days they did this, and they're 2-hour videos, at least 10 of them, well worth every moment. Everyone who speaks is giving you really good information about things that happened in the past. So I thought that was is the first time of us doing Once Upon a Time in Ufology, that'd be the perfect one to kick it off with. So with that being said, I want to get to my last segment here. We're going to try this out occasionally every now and then, but after this, we'll get you guys out of there. I know we've been here for a while. Let me get our final segment up. And also, please leave in the comments any ideas that you may have for Once Upon a Time in Ufology, any specific cases that you think are important. Please leave those in the comments so we can make sure that we do cover those. And let's see here. The last segment that we have that we'll be trying out with our audience is going to be Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition. Now, the idea behind this is, and it was something I thought of when I was made aware that UFOs were real back in 2017 with Elizondo in the New York Times article. So after that point, I started looking at things differently. And then I went back and watched some of my favorite movies that I had watched previous, and the effect that they had on me, knowing now that these things are real and that they're here, it was a totally different viewing experience. So I already know, Mattel, what movie is going to be the first one to kick this off. And I want everybody out there, I'm sure even if you've seen it, cool, go watch it again. If you've seen it after December 17th or December 2017, then you probably know what I'm saying. But if you haven't watched these movies since this has been made official, go back and then see the effect that they have on you. So this movie that I'm recommending, and we'll talk to you guys about on our next video, is going to be none other than Dark Skies. So not the Bryce Zabel Dark Skies, which is still an epic TV show and is essentially would fit into this science fiction or science fact. But specifically, I wanted you guys to look at Dark Skies, the movie from 2013 that I believe is still on Netflix. So if you have time this evening, open time, maybe get popcorn, get the family together and watch this one. but the angle that this movie takes, and then you think about it in the light that, okay, possibly these things that when I originally watched it, I felt were science fiction and possibly couldn't happen. Now that you know that it's possible, take a look at this. Leave in the comments what you thought or what you felt after you watched this. But that's kind of what I wanted to end on tonight. So I definitely want to thank you guys for coming and hanging out. We got a few people in here, more people than expected. So I'm grateful for that. Grateful for every single one of you guys out there. If you're a subscriber, great. Thank you so much. Just hit the like button before you go up out here. Anybody that hasn't subscribed, you're on the fence. This is going to be a good place to be, to come in and just be a human. Doesn't matter where you're from. We're going to come
all
here.
Humans welcome.
All humans are welcome.
And aliens, if the aliens want to come in too.
And
please.
Aliens too.
Come on in.
We have some merch covering all that. That'll come out down the line. But
awesome.
If you're not, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, think about it. Please come aboard. We'd love to have you. And we'll be doing this again next week with new topics, but we're going to try the show format out for a little while, see how it does. Any yeses or nos or things you don't like or might want to see differently, leave in the comments. We consider everything. You have anything to say to the people, Mateo?
All I want to say is in your behalf, Rob, Mr. Rob G here has the greater good deep in his heart, and this is the reason he's motivated to even do this channel. I am thrilled to be able to participate because I like to talk about the topic, and Rob and I are very like-minded. But everyone out there, humanity will not be the same once disclosure takes place to a great enough degree, and it'll all be for the greater good. That's Rob's mission. If you believe in that mission, you are in the right place, and Rob's going to keep you filled in. So this is a great place to be. Hit that subscribe button. Don't hesitate, because when we get, you never know when Rob's going to go live. It could be Sunday afternoon on, conference championship day.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's always going to be good. And we'll get Tim in here. We'll get other people in here, and we'll always have a great conversation, including with the audience. So this is the place to be.
All right. Well, man, I love you guys. I really appreciate you guys being part of the team, sticking with us through our growing period. We will not disappoint going forward. I got to thank my guy Mateo for coming through this week. I got to thank Greg O'Brien. Let's go back in the chat again. Greg O'Brien, Magneticus Attractus, obviously C-Tech, Terry Hall. Anybody else who didn't even go through the comments, just really appreciate you guys all for coming. I'm gonna get out of here now. Let me go ahead and give our outro. Mateo, stick around. I'll see you in a minute. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching The Social Dig. You guys take care.